Now, let's returning to Morning Rush now is Jamil Jaffer, an assistant law professor at George Mason University and a former law clerk to Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch when he sat on the United States Court of Appeals 10th Circuit. We appreciate you coming on the show today. So how does the leak of this opinion draft expose security issues within the Supreme Court?
Well, it's obviously a dramatic breach of protocol. The idea that a Supreme Court opinion, much less the entire draft of an opinion, would be released publicly long before the opinion comes out it's hard to describe how problematic a breach of Supreme Court protocol it is. With respect to security, look, a lot of folks have access to these opinions within the court. All the justices, obviously, but each of them has 4 law clerks. They have 2 secretaries each, and then there's an entire reporter's office and folks that engage in pre-publication review of these opinions. So there are a lot of folks who put their hands on these opinions before they go out the door. But as far as I'm aware, while on occasion, in rare occasions, the results in a case have leaked ahead of time, once or maybe a few half dozen times over the past couple hundred years, maybe a dozen times at most. As far as I'm aware, we've never seen an actual opinion, draft opinion released ahead of time, and so this is a protocol breach of the highest order, and I think will cause challenges for the court going forward internally as they think about how to prevent this from happening again.
Do you know of any ways that they can prevent something like this from happening again moving forward? Because this is likely going to change the protocol, right?
Well, yeah, I think, obviously, there are policies and procedures that the U.S. government and other agencies adopt when they want to control access to information. You can have things where you're logging out every time you touch a document, you're logging in and out. Each document can be serial numbered or watermarked. And so there's a lot of ways you can do this. It makes the process of going through documents much more difficult. The Supreme Court itself is already sort of an old school institution in the sense that a lot of things happen by paper rather than electronically. My sense is that something like this will probably push us further back in that old school direction, to the point of numbered copies. That's not good for the institution to be effective in doing its job. But then again, destroying the kind of, faith and trust that justices have in their clerks. One justice has another justice and their team. Potentially the clerk staff. It's hard to know who did this. There are rumors all over the internet. I don't want to get into that. Right. But whatever the result of this was or how this happened, it will, as you say, be very challenging for the court going forward.
Yeah, who did this and what is their political affiliation? What is their motivation behind doing such a massive leak like this? Now, this, again, is just a draft opinion. It's in response to the Mississippi case, which bans abortions after 15 weeks. But if Roe is overturned, Mississippi and a dozen other states have these things called trigger bans in place. What does that mean? Is it like a light switch automatically, abortion no longer legal there?
Right. So at least in some of these states, the way it would work is if they were not constrained by prior Supreme Court precedent, which if Roe were to go away, that's what the situation would be in, then their own legal procedures would kick in and they have laws on the books that would apply in those circumstances, in which case the federal Supreme Court decision doesn't control. Going back to the days before Roe, we had allowed states to sort of regulate abortion as they saw fit, and so some states allowed it, some states didn't, some states restricted it. And in fact, as we've heard rumors now, in the aftermath of this leak, a lot of us have gone back and looked at what happened during Roe, and apparently the story of Roe was that when Justice Brennan wrote the first opinion, he had actually left it in a similar situation. At the end of it, of course, it was re-argued after Justice Powell and Justice Rehnquist joined the court. But apparently the first draft of the Brennan opinion, like in this case, this alleged draft, would have left it to the states to determine how to regulate abortion going forward. So we may be back in that position depending on what happens if and when a real opinion comes out.
So I want to get to another part of this conversation that has come up. One of our guests from earlier in the show this morning mentioned it, and I've kind of seen it circulating online as well. Democrats, this renewed conversation or this renewed push to codify the protections in Roe v. Wade. What does that all entail? Is it realistic?
Well, look, I mean, I think that obviously, as you know, abortion is a hotly debated issue across the country. It divides communities, divides families, divides people of faith, and the entire mass of our body politic. But certainly, whatever the Supreme Court does, if it leaves it to the states and or the federal government, certainly the federal government Congress could codify some of the provisions. Now, the question that might rise up to courts later on are, does the federal government have the authority to overrule state decision-making in this space? As a general matter, if it has to do with the Commerce Clause, which is one of the big grants of power in the Constitution, right, you might imagine the federal government does. That'll be a hotly debated legal question. But certainly Congress has had the ability since before Roe v. Wade, and at least in the aftermath of Roe v. Wade, to try to codify its provisions in federal law. And so if they can get the votes to do it, they certainly can try to do that for sure.
Do you think it is realistic, though, that they will get the votes to do that?
Well, I mean, as we've heard, there's a lot of activists talking about what this is going to do to our electoral politics. So certainly, if the power to decide what a state does and does not do about abortion, what the federal government does and does not do about abortion goes back to them instead of being in the hands of the 9 unelected officials of the Supreme Court, then certainly it will change our electoral politics, and that may create an opportunity in Congress or the state legislatures to have an effect one way or the other. So I think we'll see this hotly debated in our political process with voters and the like as soon as these upcoming congressional elections in November, if in fact the court comes down the way that this draft opinion looks like it might.
Yeah, definitely going to have some massive ripple effects even before June, whenever this ultimate decision might be handed down. Like with these campaigns heating up, it's definitely going to be an issue for both parties. Jamil Jaffer, founder and director of the National Security Institute. We appreciate you coming on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.